Welcome, 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 you gorgeous human being. It is the Infinite Receiving Podcast with me, your host, Suzy Mother Trucking Ashworth.
Yes.
And we have an incredible human here with us today. I am so excited to really be introducing a lot of you to a really, really special person who I have known for a number of years now. Her name is Natalie MacNeil. She's a serial entrepreneur, a philanthropist.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. A how do I say it? Philanthropist.
Yeah,
there we go. There we go. A unicorn of all, just you're very, very special. You've done incredible things. There have been many iterations of who you are. And I think ultimately you are here, we were saying, that you are here to serve and liberate the planet in all of the many different facets of what it is that you do. So thank you for being here. How are you feeling?
Wow, I'm noticing that when I'm in your presence, there's something about being with you where I feel so deeply seen. And I think that's really a gift that you have. Like, you don't just look upon things or upon people, you really see them. And I feel like in the reflections that I receive from you, I get to see more me and embody more me. So that's what I'm noticing in this moment and from your introduction.
Oh, I love that so much because I was thinking about our friendship and how I've got to know you over the years. And I would say that my biggest reflection for you is that as I have seen more of you, as you have allowed more of yourself to be seen, I've felt more of your potency, more of your magic, like everything just makes even more sense. And so it's very inspiring for me to see you in your fullness. It gives me permission to be in my fullness more. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think that's what people are really craving, right? People want to be more of themselves, and yet it can feel like there are so many barriers to that because of our upbringings, because of societal conditioning, because of religious conditioning. And I love seeing so many people, yourself included, really stepping into new ways of being and being that permission slip.
I am really curious about your upbringing. I don't really know much about your childhood, so how did it all begin?
I've been in deep reflection this week, actually, on my upbringing, because I did a journey with plant medicine with my siblings. And that was one of the deepest, most profound experiences, because I feel like these parts of me really got activated and unlocked because they're things that I feel only they could mirror to me. And I got to crawl into like the depths of my psyche, the crevices of the earliest parts of my identity that was forming at a young age. So I've really been reflecting on this a lot. I'm the oldest of four.
Okay.
And that can come with a lot of responsibility. At least for me, I felt a great deal of responsibility for my siblings and for being there for them in their upbringing. My parents had me when they were still in school, still figuring things out.
Okay.
And and they made the choice to have me for a number of different reasons, even though they felt like, wow, we're in debt right now, we haven't got everything figured out yet, and this is what feels right in this moment. And my mom thought that if she didn't have kids when she was younger, because of some health related things, that she wasn't going to be able to have them, and so they made that decision. And they had quite a bit of struggle. They had to work really, really hard. And I saw that. I saw the hard work. I saw the worry. I internalized all of those things, and that became the foundation of my identity. Like, I remember when my mom would be worried about money. I remember when some of my earliest memories are living in a trailer park with them.
Wow.
Some of my first, like, earliest memories in that space, and seeing how they expanded and grew and how they supported all of us, and it really encouraged us as well to pursue our dreams, which was amazing. Like, they were the kind of people that were very adventurous. Like, they did a lot with what they had, even financially. They always tried to, like, make it all work, and we would have all these adventures. And I feel like I can look back and see how so much of my self, like, was formed at that time. And also some of the things, like being an entrepreneur, at the age of like 5, 6 years old, I would start lemonade stands. Okay. I would go door to door selling like popsicles and juices. But at the time, I felt like I needed to contribute to my family. Like, because my mom would talk about being worried about money, I felt like, okay, I need to take that on as my responsibility. Like, I have younger siblings, and maybe I can contribute. And I think some of my earliest entrepreneurial inklings are potentially rooted in that wounding in a way. And from that place of lack. And who knows, maybe I would have been an entrepreneur anyway. Maybe that contributed to it. Maybe it was a little bit of both. But I've just been in this deep reflection around how I did end up here, and what were those earliest building blocks of my life, and where am I operating from those places unconsciously, so that I can make the unconscious conscious and check in with myself and ask, would I choose this again? Like, does this feel authentic to me? So that's been that's been the last week of my life.
I'm really, really surprised. And I think that this is another perfect example of how people might look at you and be like, she's really put together, like, I think that people will look at you and make the judgment on the negative side of that's privilege. That's white privilege. This is where I can imagine where she's come from, and I imagine that she has been given it all, which is why you are in the position that you are in. I think that I just imagine that. No, and that's never been my, like, I didn't think that, but at the same time, I didn't think that you were going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I remember being brought up in a trailer. Yeah, that's not what I was expecting at all. Do you have a close relationship with your parents?
Yeah. My family is very close. Like, my siblings, we just love each other so much. And I'm very close to my parents as well. They're such loving, compassionate humans. And I feel very grateful for the upbringing that I did have. And look, I do hold a lot of privilege as well, even though I've had those experiences, and all of that can coexist.
The duality of life. 5 years old, to have that level of awareness around responsibility feels huge.
I was an interesting child in that way. Like, I did have a deep awareness at that time. I can look back now and really see that, because I felt like the way that I saw things, the way that I saw the world, the way that I saw systems, when I would watch the news, I had an awareness of, this is what's being presented here is not actually the whole truth. Like, I remember thinking those things as a child, and I also just loved looking up at the sky. Like, I would lay outside and I would look up at the sky, whether it was daytime and clouds were rolling by, or it was nighttime, and I would look up at the stars, and I could feel myself part of something so much bigger. And that really guided me. Some of my other earlier memories actually include being in hospital. I got really sick at one point when I was a child, and I was hospitalized, and I never felt alone in that, even though I was sleeping at the hospital by myself. And as a small child, that's hard. Like, that's a challenging thing. And yet I always felt this presence of something so much bigger holding me. And I've had those awarenesses as well. I had a traumatic birth too, and I had forceps that were actually put all the way through, like broke really deep into the skin, and they didn't think I was gonna make it. And when you look at my baby pictures, like when I'm first born, I'm just so swollen, and it looks so bad. Like, I look at it and it's so heart-wrenching. And I had this big scar on my face growing up that was very noticeable, that kids would comment on and people would comment on out in the world. And I would always look in the mirror and I would see that scar. And my reframe of that, because some of the reflections were like, oh, what happened there? For me, it was, I must be here for a reason. I survived that. Like, here I am. And there's a reason for my being here. That's how I saw it. So a lot of deep awareness at a very young age.
That feels like otherworldly wisdom. That's the wisdom of all of the lives that have come before. Do you not feel that?
Maybe? Do you know what's interesting? I can feel... I always try to articulate this so that it really can make sense. The best way I can articulate it is I feel a lot of deep wisdom. I feel this like power that moves through me that I communicate with. And I've been asked a lot about past lives. And actually, since I was very young, I have felt more of a connection to future lives and future timelines than to past ones. Since I was a little girl, I always felt this deep connection to my future self in this lifetime, but also just future timelines and possibilities that made me grapple a lot with time when I was growing up. And even being here in LA, I grew up in a small town in Canada, and I remember sitting at the library as a child, and I was reading Encyclopedia Britannica, and in it, it was talking about the PCH, the Pacific Coast Highway, and there was this picture of I remember it as like the on-ramp to the Pacific Coast Highway from Santa Monica, and I remember I saw that picture, and I just had this knowing of, I'm gonna live there one day. And I would say to my family, I'm gonna live in California, and I would tell people this, and they're like, you haven't even been to California. How do you know that? And I just knew it. And the first time I did come here in my late teenage years, it's like I could see my future self walking the beach. I just knew I was gonna land here.
It's so interesting. There's a part of me that just wants to say, you're so weird. And
I am so weird. And I love that about myself.
Someone said it to me the other day. They went, please don't take offense at this, but you're kind of weird. And I was
love that about you too. Like, thank you so much.
My experiences are not quite the same as that, but I do remember when I moved to my family house when I was 8 years old. And we'd seen lots of houses, some big, some small, and we ended up in this 2-bedroom bungalow. And I remember walking into the hall and just having that knowing, like, this is where, this is the house. And it was the house. And actually, it's not that I can see my future self in the way that you describe, but when I allow myself, the knowing is there. Does that make sense? It's like, I don't know why, but this is the thing. I'm not sure why, but this is the thing. And that can be very comforting when I quieten my mind down enough to allow that knowing, because I believe that presence is always there. And when I allow it to come through. But often I'm in distraction mode and busy mode and miss the awareness.
Like, how do we continue to turn down the noise and to really tap into our truth and to what is really only revealed in the whispers, like those quiet moments. And it used to be easier for me to find those moments. And sometimes I feel like things are so sped up.
Yeah.
And sometimes I move so fast. And when I have that awareness, I'm very intentional about slowing down.
Yeah.
So that I can really hear what is true and to sense what's alive in the moment.
Yeah. Easier when you were a child, or just easier like a few years ago? Like easier when you were in Canada, like easier when?
Yeah. You know, it feels like it progressively gets more challenging. And I would, chalk that up to a lot of different things, because we have things like social media now. We have this whole world that we've created online and virtually. And there's something about that just makes things feel like they're moving so fast.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that and maybe part of it is getting older, because there are studies that show that as you get older, you feel like time's going faster and faster. So I continue to ask myself, like, how can I move more at the speed of nature?
Yeah.
How can I slow down? How can and when I am in nature, I feel time as being very different. Like when I'm in my garden and I'm very connected to the buds on my jasmine vines or on my rose bush, and I'm caring for them and I'm watching them slowly open and then mature and then die and then go through this whole other cycle. When I'm really with my plants, there's something about that allows me to hear those whispers of life.
Yeah. The question that I want to ask, because we've mentioned time so many times in this short time.
Time.
Yeah. Is the whole concept of timelines, especially because I mentioned past selves, you mentioned future selves, and at the same time, I'm thinking, but they're only now? Like, is it not all happening now?
Right.
And I'm interested in your thoughts on that concept.
I'm interested in your thoughts on that concept. I'm not a physicist, and I've listened to physicists talk about time, and I'm like, I want to just sit down and I want to hear everything that you want to share. And time, as we see time, it is really a construct. Like we've constructed the time that we now collectively operate within.
Yeah.
And yes, I think it is all sort of happening at the same time. Like everything's sort of happening at the same time. It's one of those things that I just can't even fathom and wrap my mind around. But it feels to me like we have all of these different timelines that we can move on.
Yeah.
I was in a meditation last year in my garden. So much wisdom having a garden that comes through. It's amazing. I was in my garden and I was watching a spider in her web, and just the way that she was moving on the web, the way that she wrapped this fly that had got caught in the web. Like, I was so mesmerized by what was happening, and I went down this whole rabbit hole of a spider web, because I'm like, first of all, how does this web end up forming? Yeah. The way that she was moving in the web, it was so interesting. And what I was reading was that there are actually different, the web has different vibrations. So different, I guess, strands of the web have different vibrations, and she's navigating based on these different vibrations. And so it feels like the way that she's moving, she creates these paths that have these certain vibrational frequencies. Yeah. And there was something about that was like, it's kind of how I experience life. Like it's this big web, and we have these different paths that we can follow.
Yes.
And in terms of the timepiece of those, I have no idea. I'm not even going to begin to think about it. I just more and more surrender to the mystery of it all. But I do feel like we have multiple paths forward, and we get to choose those. We get to feel which one we want to step onto and move in that direction.
Have you seen Everything, Everywhere, all at once?
Everywhere, all at once. So good.
It's so good.
So good. Yeah. That was one of those movies like The Matrix.
That
really put visuals to these things that I could sometimes feel.
Yeah. I find that the whole timeline thing, I'm able to wrap my head around it when I'm thinking about co-creation and I'm thinking about manifestation. And when I think about those things, it's really helpful for me to be in the space of, or if everything exists, like if all of the energy that ever was and all of the energy that ever will be is here in the universe now, all versions of me are here in the universe now.
Yes.
So that is it in its most simple terms.
Yeah. Thank you for simplifying it. My love, who you've met, Yosef.
Yes.
He simplifies these things. Like I'll explain all these crazy ideas and energies that I'm feeling, and he's like, here's a beautiful metaphor for you to understand this more simply.
Yeah. Ta-da! Ta-da! So then it's just about me choosing which part of the web, choosing which alignment I want to be a match for. If only it were that easy to just be able to make the decision, except I think that the people who are really in mastery of that part of our journey, being able to co-create effortlessly, it is just a choice. They are able just to step into, just as she is in Everything, Everywhere, all at once. We will get that title correct. The mastery is that she can become whoever she desires to become once she decides that it is possible. When she decides to step out of the construct of who she has been and step into who she desires to be, which the strongest, most potent version of her is the version that chooses infinite love, which is the thing. When I think about you, there is a radiance, like you radiate love. And I am curious, how intentional has that been for you to really be in practice when it comes to loving and being a lover, person of love? Like, how intentional has that been?
Yeah, love has felt very easy for me. It's come very easily. Having my heart feel like it's wide open to the world and to humanity, it feels like something that has always been present. And that was also mirrored to me by my parents, by even my grandparents. They did a lot of volunteer work with our local food bank, which is where people could come when they can't afford to have food, and they could go shopping essentially at these food banks to pick up their groceries and to receive those at no cost. And I come from love. I really felt like I came from love, like here in this reality and in this lifetime, and also more general, more broadly, I feel like I'm a child of love. And one of the things that happened this past week too with my siblings is that I got to see that on such a deep level. Like we all have that. There's just so much love, and our hearts are so open. And I go out into the world, and there are things that I see that break my heart, and I let it. I let it break my heart, and I let it make me really feel my humanity and this tenderness in the heart space without actually closing that. And I realize more and more now that that is a gift, to be able to keep your heart open in this world and just everything that we witness happening in the world. Yeah. I think that is one of my superpowers.
Yeah. It makes me feel emotional because that's the work. Like, that is the work. For me, part of the mission is my own work is to see how much more open can I allow my heart to be. Mm-hmm. And it comes from a place of, for many, many years, without being aware of being a kind-hearted person, but not realizing that my kind heart was like protected by all of the bars. You know, being consciously and unconsciously being afraid of having my heart broken. And I think that clients in business, the people that I work with, they're afraid of having their heart broken because it hurts.
It hurts so much. Yeah.
So why would we do that to ourselves? Why do you allow that? You crazy weirdo.
Oh, yeah. It's and look, I also have had times where my heart has felt so broken and I could feel those layers coming up. And I've also had experiences that have happened in the past where I can feel those layers and I can work with them to keep my heart more and more open. And why am I such a weirdo in just keeping it open? That's such a good question. And that is when I feel most alive. Like, when my heart is open, that's when I feel connected to life. That's when I love what I do. Yeah. That's when ideas come very easily, when I make decisions very easily. Like, when my heart is open, I just know, and I have those reference points now and that evidence that there is no other way that I want to live, because that's where the aliveness is. That's where I feel like I'm my highest self. And it's worth it. Like, it's just worth the pain to me that comes up. I actually think I would argue that it's way harder. It's way more painful to move through life with a closed heart than it is to move through life with a broken heart. And if you're going to live with an open heart, then an open heart is a heart that will feel very tender and will feel like I don't love the word breaking, but we'll feel this like tenderness and that pain because we're feeling all of what's happening in the world. Like, we're just feeling it all.
What you just said there was such a mic drop. Like, to go through life with your heart closed is much more painful than going through life with your heart broken. So those
broken open.
Yeah. Oof. Oh, you're just like layering it on. And then have another one. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So what I would argue is that people don't know what they don't know. So when I think about my own journey with this, and I want to emphasize that I'm so in the process, my heart was broken when I was 3 months old.
Ooh.
I didn't know that I had made the decision when I was a baby that it wasn't safe for me to live with my heart open, that it wasn't safe for it to not be exposed. And so it's only through the serendipity of the journey that I've had this awareness, that I have gone on these journeys, that I've met these people, you being one of them. We have these moments. I remember when I was in Thailand after my mum passed away, and I met this guy who was a modern day peace pilgrim. He was an Indian guy, and he was cycling around the world, and his message was love. And we sat on the side of a mountain, and he made me an egg curry, and it was the most exquisite masterpiece of a moment, you know, like 30 years later or 25 years later, I don't want to age myself, like 25 years later, like I can still feel him. I can see his face. I can remember how great the curry tasted because it was made with love. And he had no grand script. It was just him, and it radiated from him. And he was on purpose. It didn't mean to me then what it means to me now, but the feeling that I had in his presence, that was a sign. That was this is what it could look like. This is how it could feel. This is how it could be if you could allow your heart to be open. I just didn't know it at that time. But now, in the circles that we move in and the people that we meet, you have these like beacons of light. You know, people describe you as like, have you met Natalie? She's like a little earth angel. You know, if you meet Natalie outside of work, she's going to have glitter on her face, some kind of crazy outfit on.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like running around like this pixie, like there's a light that moves with you. And we meet these people in the world, and these people that have the light around them are often the people with their hearts open.
And it's interesting because when you and I connected, I felt you as a kindred spirit in that way. Like everything that you just said about me, that's how I feel about you.
Thank you.
I'm curious, when you had that experience of the man making you that egg curry, what was the quality of it? Like, was it that you felt like it was an unconditional love? It was that it felt so unconditional.
It was unconditional, and it was presence. It's very unusual for people to be able to give you 100% presence without needing anything back from you. You know how you meet some people and they're like, eye contact, but the eye contact, it feels false. Like it feels like there's something in there, whether it's something to prove or whatever it is. And then there are some people who just want to look at you. There are some people that just desire to see you and to be with you. And that feels very different. And I feel like he just wanted to be with me. The agenda was to share his love.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah,
and I felt
so
it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so, so beautiful. Did you ever watch Mr. Rogers?
Oh my God.
Do you know Mr. Rogers?
I watched Mr. Rogers on the plane. There's nothing that I love more than watching like a slightly sad film that allows me to cry my heart out on a plane. Like that is my favorite thing to do. So yes. And I think I started crying about 15 minutes in, and I cried for the whole film. It was amazing.
Fred Rogers. So when Fred was receiving his Lifetime Achievement Emmy, I think it was his Emmy, he, in his speech, gave so much gratitude to so many other people. And he said, all of us have the people who loved us into being. And I really carry this with me because there's something so powerful about that loving someone into being. And I feel like I really got to embody this in my relationship with Yosef as well. It just helped me to embody that on a different level. We never try to change each other. There's always just an acceptance of, here's where you are now, here's who you are now. And we hold each other to a high standard. We hold each other to truth, like to really being in our truth and our authenticity, but never from a place of wanting to change them, more from that place of loving someone into being. And I feel in the world, and I notice this a lot, even in spiritual communities, people who want to bring in new paradigms in the world and want to be change makers. And it comes from this place of wanting people to change, wanting the world to change, instead of just loving people into being. And I think those are two very, very different things. And that's what I want to stand in and stand for, is loving each other into being.
Oh, that is so, so potent and powerful. And I stand next to you in that mission.
Thanks, Mr. Rogers.
We love you. Yeah. When I think about that in relation to relationship, I'm excited about having that opportunity. When I think about it, and specifically in intimate relationship, and also in friendship, and also in business. And I think that you have such a broad spectrum. You know, you've written books, you've worked in the media, you have your Emmys, you have the coaching certificate. Like, you have so many different perspectives of business. And I'm curious about, how is this playing out for you in this iteration?
Oh, I am always just in the listening of what wants to come through. And in that way, I've been seeing myself more and more as an artist of business. Like, business is just one more art form for me, and one more place where I get to bring everything that I'm learning. I get to bring that embodied wisdom forth in a way that feels true and in a way that feels alive. And in that sense, I'm not afraid to let things go if they're not working. I don't force, because I know that what's coming through is exactly what I meant to be sharing in a particular moment. So I love business as this playground and as this game in a way. It's very fun for me. And I've always been somewhat good at it. And it's a different way, I think, of doing business and looking at business. It's very much play for me, though.
Was it like that from the beginning? The beginning?
No. I definitely grew into that. Although starting my first business, and when I was working in media and production and working on a whole bunch of different projects, like telling people stories, I just kept following those whispers. And it was very fun. But in the earlier days, I did still feel like there was proving. There was this feeling that I had something to prove. And same with when I had started She Takes on the World, which was a small blog that turned into this whole global community and book deals. And that for me was also from that place of feeling like I had to prove something, like my achievements somehow made me more worthy. And I had this experience. It was a really powerful initiation, like a shamanic initiation, and it was rooted in death, like a death initiation. And in that experience, we were not allowed to share anything about ourselves when we showed up. So we showed up, and you didn't have a name, you didn't have any parts of your identity, you couldn't talk to other participants outside of the ways that you would interact within the container that was set. And I noticed in that experience how often I would still go to, oh, I'm Natalie and I am, all these labels that I would use to identify myself and my work. And I would love talking about my work. And there was something in that felt like the achievements are also how I would build relationships.
Yes.
And I would sometimes from that place almost distrust a relationship because I knew that it was built on, or from my perspective, my story was that this person, they appreciate me, they love me, they see me as being valuable because of my achievements, because that was something that I was putting as a focal point too. Yeah. And it was in that experience, it completely shattered my world, because not only did I get to notice that, and it was so liberating to be there just as a being, no identity, no name or anything. And at the end of that, when we were able to talk again, almost everyone reflected to me that I felt like such a light in their journey. And every time they were in a really dark moment of moving through the experience, it felt really hard, there was a lot of emotion coming up, that I felt like this centered, like pillar of light for them that allowed them to go through these very deep healing processes. There was a safety in my presence. Yeah. There was a feeling that they could trust me. There was a feeling that I was someone with an open heart. And for me, I still get chills thinking about it, because it allowed me to really know that and to trust on such a deep level, not that I needed the external validation, but like, oh, I am that. It's not about any of my achievements. It's that this is me. This is what I stand in. And people feel that, and people gravitate towards me, or they don't, from that feeling that they have about me.
I love that so much. When it comes to the proving piece, do you think that it was, I ask people to say, I have nothing to prove, not even to myself. Were you trying to prove stuff to yourself?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was both. It was proving externally, it was proving to myself that I'm worthy. Like I think a lot of things come back to worthiness. I think unworthiness is one of our deepest core wounds as humanity. And yeah, it was both of those things. And when I really got that piece that I just shared, it's like everything started to shift. And even in this interview, the reflections that you've given me, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's real, and I trust it and I feel it, and I can really receive those reflections because I'm not trying to prove, and because I've let go of like, oh, people only like me because I'm only worthy because of the things that I've done. Now I just get to like be exactly be. And in the beingness, it's like all the doing that's now happening is born from the beingness. The doing is born from the beingness. And that feels like from that place, I'm now creating, I think, some of my most potent bodies of work, the work that I am doing, my business, everything feels like it's being born from this pure field of beingness.
I call that wholeness.
Yes, wholeness.
Yeah.
I love talking about this. Like, whole is the goal
Yeah.
in my life now.
Yeah.
Whole is the goal. That's what I'm here for, to become more and more whole, and to help other people to become more and more whole.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we really, really need. We need a world of people in their wholeness, more than like needing to change parts of the world or anything like that. Like, I'm here to stand for people's wholeness.
Yeah, same. I say we want to become more full of ourselves. And if we have a world of people that are full of themselves, everything, as a ripple effect, as a domino effect, everything gets to sort itself out, because we are coming from that place of love. We're coming from that place of worthiness. We're coming from that place of wholeness. So the fear, the scarcity, the doubt, which is what drives so many people to do so many, for want of a better word, negative things, that's dissolved as we're coming from this place of knowing our worth, trusting ourselves, trusting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the magic.
How can I not trust you coming from this place? You know, there's nothing to be fearful of in your presence, because you're coming from this place of knowing who you are.
And part of that for me is also having navigated your shadows, having navigated your darkness, because I think that those are the parts that really get shut down in the world, and so conditioned through society, through the systems and structures and religion and all of that. And I trusted myself. I only came to trust myself when I had traversed my own shadows and integrated those and really embodied my darkness as well as my light. And I find that I'm most magnetized towards, and I feel the deepest trust with people who have also traversed those worlds.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of energy that is used to contain the parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of. And so there becomes the barrier. There becomes the blockage, which again is what we teach in business. But often we're not having the conversation from this level of truth. It's an energy thing, and if you're not confident about yourself, like, it's dressed up in, be confident, know that you're good enough, without actually saying, that piece there that you're trying to hide, can we just have a chat with that piece?
Yeah.
Can we just give some love to that piece? Can we just be accepting to that piece?
Yeah.
That changes things. How long have you been on that journey? Like, when did that, because I think, and I said this right at the beginning, like, the more full of yourself you have become, the more connection I have felt with you. And I know that it's always a life's work. It's a life's journey. Every step.
Totally.
Every step is taking you there. But there's just, integration is the word. So at what point did you start doing the work, the shadow work, and just allowing, I suppose, more parts of you to coexist in harmony?
I think it's been the last decade.
Yeah.
About the last decade where I've really been on that journey. But the last, I would say, 5 years where I've gone really, really deep into all of that, all parts of me, and reclaiming parts of me and integrating them. I was noticing as I started doing that work that because I had already started living my life somewhat publicly from the time I was in my early 20s, there were pieces that I felt I felt good about, but that I was very afraid to put out into the world. Yes. And I feel like there's been a delay. There's been a lag on my own, what I have felt has been my integration and my journey, and then what I also share. Yes. And this almost figuring out how I have to, or how I should share it. Yeah. Like, how do I integrate this in a more public way? And so that was a journey that I went on as well, to just figure out how I want to do that. And what are the things that I want to keep private and what are the things that I do want to share? What are the things that people may not be ready for yet? And just like sensing and feeling and navigating from that place, because I don't think we have to share everything.
Yeah. How do you
But it's
know?
hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
So when we're talking about authenticity and living this life of liberation and helping people step into their wholeness, where's the line? Is there a line? Where's the line?
I will pretty much answer any question that I'm asked, and I will answer it very honestly, except if it impacts other people.
Sure.
So if it's going to be something that's disclosed that people might be able to assume who it's about or what that, I'm very careful about those kinds of things, but I will authentically answer the questions that I'm asked. And then more and more, I navigate from a place of what also makes sense to share based on my body of work and what I'm creating. I felt very, very stressed when I was sharing everything, because I used to do that in my early days of building my social media following. And I had built a pretty big following in the very early days of social media and was appearing on all these lists of influencers to follow. And back when I was like, influencers, like, what does that even mean? And I took a break for a few years because I felt like I needed it. I was burnt out from that process of always sharing, always creating content. Yeah. And I experienced such deep peace in that space that when I started to come back, I was more selective. And it's really just a tuning in to why, like, what is the purpose of sharing this? That's what I often ask myself. Why am I sharing this? Is this going to serve? Is sharing this going to serve the people who are here in my community, in the spaces that I'm in? And if I feel that it will, then I will share it. But I don't just share it for the sake of sharing everything or trying to get attention for certain things. I'm very intentional about what I share.
Yeah. We have a mutual friend, Layla Martin, and she says, like, her training is in classical tantra, but often the teaching and what she shares is neo-tantra, because she's like, the world just isn't ready for everything that I have learned in classical tantra. It will send people. They're just not ready for it. And ultimately, if the mission is to raise the consciousness, meeting people where they're at is the most useful thing to do.
And I trust that this wisdom that we gather along the way, maybe there's a purpose for it in the future. I was in my production company doing a lot of work around 360-degree technology, some of this foundational work in VR very, very early. Like I won my Emmy for being a producer on this project that was a 360-degree non-linear film, like very groundbreaking. And at the time I was like, how did I even find myself here? And now it makes more sense. Now as we have the emergence of the metaverse and AI and Web3 and everything I'm learning in those spaces, now I know why I had some of that knowledge and why I learned those things early on. Things always come back around. Things always weave into your journey, sometimes in very unexpected ways. And I trust that. And I trust that I'll always know when is the right time to share something. I've noticed in the last few years, many of us have been more open about journeys with plant medicine. And that was something that I can't even imagine talking about 10 years ago. There was so much stigma around that, and there was just a lot of misconceptions about it. And I feel like now people are more open to that. I get asked a lot more questions about that. And it also takes those people who are willing to talk about it first. So it's always that feeling of, well, am I meant to go first here? Am I meant to add my voice a little later on? And just trusting that you'll intuitively know.
Do you feel that often you have gone first because of this connection with your future self? I think that it's just an interesting thing for me to consider, because like you just said with the whole 360-degree media thing, it's like, but how did that even oh, okay. Like,
and that was a long time ago,
yeah,
like 12, 13 years ago. Yeah. Innovation is something that I don't know. I grew up in a city that was very innovative,
yeah,
very entrepreneurial city. And maybe that had something to do with it, but I have always felt like I'm here to be somewhat of an innovator.
yeah.
I really relate to the pioneer archetype.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to live on that edge of evolution.
Does it feel risky? Like, some people are very risk averse. If you're risk averse, then probably entrepreneurship is not the thing.
I'm not risk averse. Yeah.
How does it feel in your body? And I know that a lot of the work that you do is somatic work. It's helping people feel safe. So maybe that's why you needed to work out how to feel safe in your body as you're making all of these. Mm-hmm. Taking yourself to the edge. Yeah, I'm curious. How did it feel when you were taking risks in the beginning versus now? Do you even see them as risks?
It doesn't feel very risky when it's something I feel deeply called toward. There's just a knowing. But I think the knowing that we're called to something for a reason is something that you have to build up. Like, that's a muscle that you're building because the brain likes to have evidence.
Yeah.
So as I've taken the risks and I've seen that not every risk pays off for me, but there's always so much learning in it, and I can always look back and connect all of those dots. And so I have all these pieces of evidence now where I can tell my mind, okay, this might be a little bit out there. This might be a bit more of a risk than we've taken before, but look at all the evidence. It's always working out. Things are always working out for me. And that's helped a lot. But I think people need to be very aware when they're taking the risk, regulate themselves through that, know that they're taking that risk because it comes from a deep why, see how it plays out, and make sure along the way you're planting those seeds of evidence in the mind of, okay, this worked, or this I would do a little bit differently because I have all those almost as standard operating systems for myself. It's like I have SOPs for my business systems and also for my mind.
Yeah.
And I've been very intentional about crafting those in a way that supports me in taking more risks and following a path that I feel called to walk.
The biggest thing that I hear is the deep why. And I think that often people feel called into taking big risks through fear of missing out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is a very different game. It's very different energies that you're playing with internally and externally.
Yeah. I root everything in why and in values. And so before I jump into anything, I am attuning to that why and making sure that there is that deeper purpose that's there. So I don't just leap into risks.
Yeah.
There is a very deep listening. And I think the why, because this whole podcast is called Infinite Receiving, I think when you're in that why, that is a really big activator of the infinite receiving.
Yeah. What is interesting about infinite receiving is that on the surface of it, it's like, how do I get more? Which is fine. But really, infinite receiving is allowing all of it. And that's the light, it's the dark, it is the mission, it's the vision, it's the small part of you that just wants to like hang out and watch Netflix and eat potato chips. And
love that part of me too.
It's allowing it all. It's knowing in every single moment there is an opportunity for you to be receiving consciously. And if you're not conscious, you're receiving anyway. It's just that you don't get the lessons and the learning. And so can we be more conscious so that we can create more intentionally and allow more intentionally and love more intentionally?
Yeah, I love that. And I think the intention requires that slowness and that space as well. That's where it becomes so important to slow everything down.
Yeah. Even in the conversation, it's permission to pause.
Yeah.
Permission to receive, to process it. It's so beautiful when you can have a conversation with somebody and you have those times where you're really excited and somebody says something and you want to bounce off and like it's like those conversations are fun. And also there's just when somebody says something and you allow it to resonate around your field, you know? And often those nuggets are dropped when there's spaciousness.
Totally. Like my highest desire for everyone listening to this podcast episode is there are probably like 2 or 3 nuggets from an episode where those are the few things that you're taking away. Or maybe it's just one big thing, like one thing that you or I said in this episode gave someone the chills.
Yeah.
They could feel it on like a soul level. Like they could feel that penetrate their cells. And in that, can you allow yourself to come to your own understanding of it and your own embodiment of that later? So can you take this into a meditation? Can you take that one nugget into a meditation? Can you contemplate it? I think the art of contemplation is the art of slowing down and the art of really letting something percolate, like really letting it penetrate you on such a deep level. And can you do that with the nugget that you're taking, the piece of gold from this episode, and let yourself like be with it and think about it and journal about it and see how it shows up in your life so that you get to embody that learning. Like that's true learning. If you just listen to something or you learn something but you don't take action on it and embody it, that's what zero learning is. It's not actually learning.
It's consumption.
It's just consumption of information.
Yeah. When you talk like that, it's like there's a passion switch or a dial. It's a dial. We've like turned up the
I have
dial.
A lot of modes. Yeah, I can get like super excited and then I can get like go really slow and deep. And
I'm curious, what are you most excited about right now?
What feels most alive right now is that there's been something coming through, and I don't know if it's a new book or if it will end up taking a different form. I did like 6 books in 10 years, and I needed a little break from it, which has been really nice because I've been creating a lot of content for Coaching Evolved and our whole curriculum there. And just in the last couple months, there's this new body of work, new idea that's been dancing with me and coming to me. And when that happens, I like to engage and dance with the idea, but without the attachment of this is my idea. Like maybe someone else will grab onto that idea and maybe they're the ones who are meant to bring it into the world. But this idea just keeps like staying and dancing with me. And I've started to write some things down for it. And it's very exciting. There's such an aliveness in it. And there's something about what's coming through that it feels like it's from this like well of wisdom. And the way that it's coming through is very interesting and very different from other things that have come through. So right now I'm in the space of playing with it, dancing with it, writing lots of notes, and not doing that with any kind of structure. And that's been something that's feeling very exciting. And this year, the energy of this year too, just feels like there's a lot of ease, and it feels like there's a lot that is blooming. I really have been through a deep initiation in the couple years leading up to this year. And I think we all have. We were talking about this. Almost everyone I know has had some kind of major life change initiation that they've been in over the last few years. And now I feel like there's a lot blooming from that space. Yeah. And I'm excited just to be in the anticipation of like, oh, what's blooming and what's this going to look like?
Positive expectation.
Positive expectations. Yeah.
Available for that.
Oh, and it's so good. One of the other things I've been really excited about are these kinds of conversations and just the incredible humans that I get to work with and play with and create with and just dance through this life with. Yeah. That's ultimately what it's all about to me, because we can go off and we can do this work on our own. We can do all this work within ourselves and feel pretty integrated within ourselves. But the real embodiment comes from going out and being with others from that place of wholeness and having released so much like shame and self-judgment, and getting to be with each other in that space is really, really exciting. Like we had some conversations in the last few days that have been such medicine for me, and I think for the others who have been in those conversations too, because it's like, ooh, we get to do this together. Like we get to be our whole selves. Yeah. And we get to live from this place, and just our beingness inspires other people to step into what maybe feels like an edge for them, but where there's so much aliveness.
It's so fun. And I think that if I could bottle the energy, if I could bottle, I mean, this is the bottling of the conversation. But it's like, I don't think that people sometimes realize, and I think this is the open-hearted thing, like what is possible when you are willing to meet yourself first and then be met. And I think that is such an exciting prospect for the world, like more people meeting themselves and then allowing themselves to be met, seeing themselves and allowing themselves to be seen in our fullness, in our wholeness, knowing that when you meet somebody in their fullness, there is no judgment. We can be discerning about like what feels like a match for us, but that judgment piece that we're so afraid of, that falls to the wayside. And what is left in the space of that is joy, is laughter, is love, is allowing, you know, space for allowing you to be in all of your messiness and your beauty. And that is what I feel I have with you. So I am so deeply, deeply grateful. I am so excited about all of the journeys and all of the fun.
And I think, too.
You know, because I really feel like sometimes you see people who are happy, like genuinely happy, and if you're not quite there, you're like, what's the deal with that? You know? It's like, there's a little bit of cynicism. It's like, they're kind of annoying. They're just like, but it's so fun.
Mm-hmm. I've turned down the dial of my joy in the past because I could tell that some people were like, oh, this is so irritating. I'm like, is my joy annoying to people? But not anymore. Yeah. And I love what you just said too, because being able to meet ourselves and then be met by another in that place and in all of our messiness, in our shadow, in also our joy and the light and all of that, but just being able to meet each other in all those facets, that's where we really get to feel how worthy we are just because we're here having this experience. Like that is what really melted any residue of unworthiness in my system. It's like getting to have that in my romantic partnership with Yosef, getting to have that with people like you who I feel really like we're on the same wavelength. You really get it.
Yeah.
And with friendships that I have, with even sharing that with my family, like my siblings are incredible humans, and I feel like I can share all of myself with them.
It's a gift.
Oh, it's such a gift.
It's a gift, it's a privilege, and I would love for it to be the standard.
Yes.
So
holding that vision with you.
It is. Natalie, where can people find all of your magic?
So I am online at nataliemacneil.com or at coachingevolved.co, and I'd love for you to come and follow me on Instagram at Natalie MacNeil. And I love asking people, if you are taking away like a piece of gold from this episode, please DM me on Instagram. What is it? Like, what was the thing that really landed for you or that gave you chills, was an aha moment that you're taking and weaving into your life? I would really love and appreciate that, and thank you in advance.
DM Natalie, tag us both on IG, share it with a friend, somebody that you know that will benefit from this, and please remember that it is faith plus action that equals miracles, and I look forward to being in your earbuds next time.